It's been now 104 days since anyone last saw the Bibas family. So Kfir turned 1 today. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old myself, and I know how excited I got when my babies turned 1, the preparation, you're going to planning their parties and buying them presents. And it's a travesty that this little baby is held hostage in Gaza under who knows what conditions. So I just think it's really important that just to come and show solidarity, show that we're thinking about these people who've been denied basic life, and just to do everything in our power to get them home. I think events like this are just a reminder that the people that are held hostage in Gaza are real people. Their parents, they would have met at some stage, fallen in love, got married, been excited when they found out they were pregnant. Their phones will be full of pictures and videos of their children, learning to walk and wearing Batman capes and all these lovely things. And they're real people who don't have these memories now. This little boy, we hope, is still alive and is spending his first birthday in the darkness, hopefully with his mother and his brother, but we just don't know. And it's just heartbreaking. And while we still have a chance to get them home and for them to have a future, we need to do everything that we can. I think naturally in news cycles, stories fall out of the news, and with this issue being so contentious, people feel then like they can tear down posters of babies, draw swastikas over little Kfir's face when he's 9 months old, taken from his family. How has this little baby done anything to anybody? And it's important to remember that whatever position you have, whatever politics, whatever side you think you're taking, we are humans. This is just humanity. Anyone who's suffering should have a voice, should have dignity. It should be remembered that on either side, and no more so than a tiny little baby, who we hope is turning 1 today. I have been shocked at the rise in anti-Semitism over October 7th. Even on October 7th itself, on the day, I remember it clear as anything, and I remember seeing the images of the Bibas family, the 2 little ginger boys being cradled by their mother in absolute distress. We'd seen women cut bloody trousers being spat at in awkward positions, showing they'd been mutilated. And on October 7th, when I was out with my children, a party sprang up that day with music, with Palestinian flags, with dancing and cheering. We hadn't even counted the dead, and the terrorists weren't even contained. And there were people cheering that on. And I feel like at the moment, in the name of misplaced empathy, in the name of the Palestinian cause, anything goes. I feel like there's nothing that isn't too bad if you say that you're doing it because you have empathy for other people. And I think anti-Semitism is wrong, and it needs to be called out. I think in this generation, we see people going out on marches that have absolutely no understanding of what they're there for. They have basic empathy for people, which is brilliant. We all have empathy, but they don't know that they're advocating for genocide with their River to the Sea slogans and posters. They don't realise that Jews and Israelis also want to live in peace with Palestinians. And, nothing showed that more clearly than the stories that you hear of the peace advocates who were murdered on October 7th. Vivian Silva, a prime example, she went on a peace march with Palestinian women just the week before she was brutally murdered. So we all want peace, we all want humanity, we all want every family to be able to live up and have, a decent life and be able to live in safety with their parents. But we can't hashtag be kind when there are tiny little babies who have been abducted by rapists and murderers and turn a blind eye to that and ignore it for political or whatever purpose. I've heard so many excuses for the barbarity that happened on October 7th since. It went from denying it happened to accusing Israel of doing these things as some kind of false flag to you deserved it. I mean, I feel like the same themes that we've seen in Holocaust denial over the years, we're now seeing in real time. Jews existing isn't a reason for anti-Semitism. Israel existing isn't the reason for anti-Semitism. There are, unfortunately, sadly, so many wars around the world where Muslims are being killed by other Muslims, and there are no marches, there are no hate campaigns. Those Muslims didn't cause their own death, didn't cause the war and destruction. And for some reason, when Jews are attacked and babies are held hostage, the calls aren't to release the babies. And then you may have a legitimate reason to say, get out, stop the violence, you have your people back. But even from the most cynical, pragmatic view, you should be calling for the hostages to be released back to their families. And if you genuinely care about Palestinian people, you should be doing everything in your power to make sure that happens, to give Israel a reason to also go home and try and rebuild some semblance of life again. I think one of the most shocking things since October 7th is seeing groups that it is their job to call out violence, to call out sexual violence, to call out, attempted genocide. And they've been silent when it comes to Israel. Israel didn't even contain the terrorists in their own country for a few days before any retaliation at all. And rockets were still being fired. We'd seen the evidence of all kinds of atrocities, and they didn't say anything. And that's a choice. And I think, unfortunately, when groups like the UN put Iranian leaders as chairs of their women's groups, then they no longer have a voice of morality. They've sacrificed that. Initially, the BBC refused to call Hamas terrorists, and eventually they realised that was a mistake. And when they mentioned them the first time, they will acknowledge they're terrorists. But unfortunately, Israel is a democracy, and it allows for a free press, and it allows people in. Hamas does not. There's not a democracy. There's no free press there. There's seen countless examples of so-called members of the press who were there during the atrocities, who are cheering it on. And until you acknowledge openly who your sources are, where you're getting your information from, then you can't trust it. And unfortunately, they still obviously want to make news. They still want to be part of the news cycle. And they still want to report on things, which is essential. But unless you acknowledge that the sources you're getting your information from aren't reliable, then you're painting yourself into a corner. I saw a 30-minute video from a pro-Palestinian march this week, from a completely neutral point of view. And so many young people were there holding signs for Intifada, from the river to the sea. And when they were asked basic questions about it, they didn't understand what they were holding, and they hadn't spent a second's thought of what it actually entails. And I think there's an undercurrent. There are people like Hamas, there are people like Islamic Jihad, there are terrorist organisations that hate Jews, that are in their charters, they want to kill Jews, and they are driving these people that don't understand anything, thinking that they're joining in for a good cause. And I think the problem we have with anti-Israel activity these days is it's in the name of progressive politics. And I think it's really important to make sure that you really understand what you're saying, what slogans you're joining in with, who you're holding hands with when you join these things, because it really does hurt people who also believe in humanity, also believe in peace, also people want everyone to live their lives, but also can't accept brutality, can't accept people who say they want to genocide them repeatedly, which is what they openly say themselves. So if you don't trust the word of Hamas when they say they want to do these things, then who can you trust? What gives me hope in these horrible times is that we have seen the release of some hostages, so we hope we will get more home. And where it's mounted, I think, so to speak, the grown-ups in the building, the British government, the American government, Western government, pretty much anyone that matters has come out in support of Israel being able to defend itself, and decried these abominations that we've seen. It's easier to focus on, the hate. It's easier to focus on the things that scare us. But while we have the support of the people of Gaza, we will survive. Jews have been subject to pogroms for thousands of years, literally thousands of years. I think a lot of people know about the Holocaust. My own family came to Britain because of Russian pogroms around the turn of the 1900s. But every 50, 70, 100 years, for the last countless 100 years, Jews have been forced out of different countries with violence and threats and intimidation and prejudice, and we survived. We'll survive this. I just hope as many people and this little baby who celebrated his first birthday today will survive it too.